Okay, what we're going to cover here is a quick overview of the Zebra Technologies industrial class printers, the XI series printers. What I've got here is an XI 3 Plus. Zebra is one or two series beyond this now in their current manufacturing, but this is the workhorse of the industry printer. What we're going to cover is just a few of the maintenance points, things to look at if you're purchasing a used one of these units, if you're trying to maintain a unit that you've got, or if you're trying to decide if you need service on the unit that you may own. These are excellent top-of-the-line printers that can last a very long time and with proper care can stay on the road for many years and give you really good labeling, well into the future. So even the model I've got in front of us now is a few years old, but it can be maintained with both Zebra parts and some third-party parts to keep it on the road for a very long time, giving you great performance on labeling. So let's get to some of the things to look for here. First of all, let's open up the unit, take a look at some basics here. Here you can see that the front plate here has been a bit scratched up, and that's because when people were opening the print head, they didn't properly understand that you can keep this down and then lift these legs up vertically to get at things like the print head that you can see there is the greenish line with the aluminum plate. That's a replaceable part, very expensive part to replace, but it is eventually needing a replacement on a unit. But again, you can buy those both from Zebra still on this unit and potentially from third parties. So just kind of showing you, the print head mechanism there. Now, again, with servicing these units, the white roller here you see, that's called the platen roller. It can get grooved if you're running labels, let's say, that are only as wide as this point. You can end up with a sort of a bump or even a cone-shaped platen roller. And here you can see, you can probably just make it out where my finger is there. There's a slit in the roller in a couple of places. It's definitely a no-no to be using box cutters and knives to free up jams on this roller, because it's a rubber roller. It's the main drive of the machine. So think of this as sort of the front wheels, on your front wheel drive car. It's pulling those labels through, and this roller should be cleaned, probably once for every consumed ribbon that you load into it. So here you can see a little bit of dirt on the right here on this roller, but nothing more than a little isopropyl alcohol and a soft rag will clean that up nicely for you. It should feel almost tacky. If it starts to feel too smooth and doesn't have much tack to it, that means it's got sort of a glaze or a buildup of dirt that's penetrated into the rubber fiber in there, and it's not going to give you the kind of traction you need to properly be printing labels and to get good, clear, good quality print, good barcodes, things like that. So that's sort of the front part of the machine, some of the things to look for. One of the other major things to kind of keep an eye out for with a printer that has a lot of miles on it is the ribbon supply spindle. So this is where your new ribbon would get loaded into the machine, and you can see here when I release that, it's got some nice backward spring tension, and will actually rotate back against my backward. So if I rotate it backwards and I release, it springs back. Now, if the springs that are inside this unit are either broken or damaged, that will not occur. So what you can see here is I can keep turning it so that the clutch eventually does slip as it's supposed to. So it's supposed to provide some back tension and keep your ribbon nice and taut as the labels are printing. But again, if this spindle gets damaged, these parts inside these spindles are no longer rebuildable, so you need to replace the entire spindle, which is a fairly easy procedure. It's 3 bolts. You pull that out, you can put a new one on there and slip the belt back on. So that can be done fairly easily in the field. This is the ribbon take-up spindle. Again, this is supposed to provide a collapsing mechanism that will relieve the tension and let you slide off the excess used ribbon off of this spindle when it's done. If people are not familiar with the best way to remove the ribbon, this can be damaged, but again, it's very heavy duty and it's a good mechanism. But if you're not seeing the proper operation of that, this entire black cap and these wings can be replaced, and a new one can be put on. So that's sort of the ribbon aspects of the printer. Labels, again, are being sort of pulled through by the platen roller, but there are sensors that will sense the gaps and the different kinds of supplies that you have in the machine. I'll try to zoom in a little bit for you here, but see that that Phillips screw? That's the top half of the media sensor. Underneath, we'll try to get a view of that, but it can be difficult on the video here. But on the bottom of that is a black plastic cube that can get filled with perforation dust and dust on the material, and that can cause the machine to be confused about where top of form is and where the label is, and it won't print the label image properly on your labels if that black little slit on the underside of that upper media sensor is clogged. So we often service that when we're working on printers. What you can see down here is this circuit board is the lower half of that media sensor, and a little isopropyl alcohol and a Q-tip can usually clean off that area nicely to just keep that, so that it can send a signal up to the upper half of that media sensor so that you can tell when labels are feeding in properly. So and what we have here is a rewinder unit. Now it can need an occasional adjustment here. That's very rare, but on high volume applications sometimes you need to, as this clutch will wear, you can adjust this nut to get the right kind of slippage on your take-up spindle if you have that option. Okay, moving around to the inside of the machine quickly. You can see this is a very well-built, heavy-duty machine. It should last a very long time for you. Very simple operation. You can see here we have two belts because we have the rewinder option in there, so you can see a second belt going downward. Most of the time, if you don't have that option, it's just a simple, 3-cog arrangement with the belt that can be slipped off. If you need to replace that belt by sliding it off of that first, and then threading it on, and then sliding the belt back onto that cog last to service the belt. And again, you can notice sometimes there'll be belt shavings inside the machine if it's rubbing on something incorrectly, or if suddenly your platen roller is not turning properly and you're noticing that there's skipping or times when it's sort of regularly not spinning, it could be because that belt is damaged and has a stretch in it or a section where there's no teeth and it may need replacement. So again, we can guide you on any of those things here at AccuWear for parts or for servicing. Now one sort of rare failure point we've seen is this connector. This is the connector that powers the motor that is turning that platen roller that I was talking about earlier. If a person that owned the printer before you or used the printer before you in your company abused the printer somewhat, you'll notice that this connector can get overheated and somewhat melted, and it can cause erratic behavior of the motor. And you might notice if you ever get labels actually going backwards in the machine or jittering around, it can be because you're getting shorting at this connector. We have the expertise to replace that connector, so you don't need to replace your motherboard or other main boards or the motor. Most of the time we find it's this connector that's been damaged in some cases, but again, we would need to evaluate that. Now what you can see up here is the head open flag. Let's see if I can get a good shot of that right there. Okay, now that design's been changing over the years, and it might be slightly different on your model, but you'll notice as I close the print head, let's see if I can get a shot of that moving. You'll see that head open flag moves between two sensor Hall effect sensors to sense the fact that the print head's been opened or closed. Zebra Xi printers do not sense the door being open or closed. They do sense the print head being opened or closed with that mechanism, the head open flag. So sometimes if you have a head open error that you can't seem to figure out why that error is happening, it simply can be because this flag has either broken or is out of position or isn't operating and may need replacement as well. So hope that helps you when you're looking at considering a Zebra printer. Again, we highly recommend these industrial class versions of the Zebra printers. They'll give you a long life. The newer models, of course, come with all of these features and more, so they're constantly upgrading these machines. But contact AccuWare if you have any questions on this video, or if you need any replacement parts or service on your Zebra printer. Thank you. Bye-bye.